Technology Solutions. I'm joined today with Bill Heather from Evolve IT.
Yeah.
Hey, Bill, how's it going?
Hey, Logan, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. It's Friday, which means I have no motivation to do anything. So why not talk to people on the internet? It's Friday.
Yeah, it's definitely better than just staring at spreadsheets, right?
If you couldn't hear that, that was like a silent scream in the background. Like, all
I
right.
think a lot of people have to do that.
Yeah, well, it is what it is. So let's talk about this real quick. Cyber insurance. I mean, so disclaimer: neither one of us are insurance professionals. We are just talking subjectively about what we've experienced as cybersecurity professionals. We are in no way, shape, or form qualified to give professional advice about insurance, so please don't take that as it is. But we've seen a lot of things play out with cyber insurance. I'd say in the last couple of years. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, I mean, let's start with the biggest one. I think that, and this, I'm kind of guilty of this a while ago, not really, but I think a lot of people before 2020 just treated if I get hacked, my plan is my cyber insurance, right? Like they were really concerned about that. They got in cyber insurance, and most companies, especially small businesses, that was good enough. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean they would just have the antivirus, right? And some basic antivirus and maybe a firewall, and then say, well, I mean, as long as I have that and my insurance, I'm going to be fine because they're going to pay for whatever the criminals do to me.
Yeah, and so, I mean, like so much, we know that changed in 2020 because of the thing we can't say on a live stream without being, pigeonholed into the internet black hole censorship. Yeah. So the thing, we'll call it the thing.
The
thing happened,
transmissible
to
thing.
stay home. And that included all the cyber criminals. And all of a sudden, I mean, some of the stats we've told clients, and I mentioned this on yesterday's live stream I did solo, we've seen as high as, 1,000% increase in just ransomware alone from 2021. Like that's some of the stats we're telling clients because they're being peer reviewed, and more it's looking like just the risk. When we talk about percentages, like what else in life do we know where risk goes up 1,000% in 1 year? Like that's incredible, right? 10x time in 1 year.
Yeah, it's definitely not common. I mean, that's like war, right?
I mean, yeah, exactly. It's like I'm thinking, when I think of my risk of something happening to me going up 10 times, it's because someone's lobbed like a missile at me, right? Like, right. Oh yeah, I'm 10 times more likely to die. Right. Why? There's a missile coming from me. Like that's what I'm thinking in my head. Maybe
oh, geez.
A little morbid, but yeah, you get what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
No, so I mean, insurance obviously has taken a hit, and I think the stats bear us out on that. Like cyber insurance for a long hot minute, and it's just now starting to seem like it's stabilizing a little, was a mess. It was, they were losing money. A lot of claims shot up, 1,000% increase in 1 year. Ransomware was in the news. We heard about, I still remember all the calls I got in 2020, 2021, Colonial Pipeline, the meat packing plants, like the ransomware stuff.
Yeah.
Like that really freaked people out because it kind of highlighted this big issue. So if insurance is, paying out, what's the problem?
Well, I mean, a lot of times they're not paying out now because they're coming to realize that they need to protect themselves better, especially a lot of the policies that are newer. I mean, we're going to get requirements on the policy of having security measures in place that if you don't have it in place, they're going to come back and say, well, you lied on your application, so we're not going to pay.
Yeah, I mean, that's one. So accuracy of applications, and those applications, to be clear, like I think you would agree. We've talked a little bit about this. Like it went from being like this simple yes or no 2-page thing that someone with a Google tab open could probably reliably answer to just check. Page after page of technical questions now. I mean, I just did my renewal about 2 weeks ago, I think is when my renewal was up. And I remember looking through this and thinking, man, they added even another page of questions that are all about policies and, frameworks and what do I have? What's my policies for this? And what's my policies for that? And how do you implement this? And what's your technology for that? And I'm like, this is even worse than last year. And so even in the last year, we've seen things change on that.
Yeah. I mean, if you go back to the travelers thing that happened recently.
Oh, yeah. You want it for, did we already sum that up? Did we already sum that up?
But that thing, basically when that happened, they had already paid out for this company before.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is the investigation, even though it was the same policy, they just really never investigate whether that application was truthful.
Yeah, no, that
And they were fine with it. But
that
now
was a ransomware
they're
attack,
taking
right?
it so much more seriously.
That was a ransomware attack,
Yeah,
right? Was that was
it was like they breached ransomware. Yes,
yeah. So yeah, they came in
it was
and sure we'll
ransomware.
pay, but now they're going after them in court, saying you lied to us because I think the crux of it, if I remember reading correctly, was they said we had MFA, we had multi-factor authentication. Turns out they didn't. They had multi-factor authentication turned on for like one thing, and that was it. And the traveler said, "Hey, no, that's not what we got from your application," and came back on them.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's.
So I mean,
I think it's just the insurance. I think it's the insurance companies just coming back and really realizing that they've got to take it a little bit more seriously because otherwise they're going to lose too much money. I mean, they want to protect people, but a joke I made before even was, you're not going to get car insurance with no brakes in your car, right? I mean, if they found out that there
you
was
can. They're
literally,
just not going to pay anything.
well, yeah, right. But they're not going to cover you if it was like the brakes don't work in your car when you have an accident. They're going to find a way to say, well, that was an inadequate vehicle and we can't cover this.
Yeah, that you should have known better is basically what they're going
Yeah.
to say. Like, because any common person knows it's not a good idea to go driving around town without brakes.
Yeah.
I say this being the kid who lived out in the country when I was growing up, so there might have been more shenanigans.
I mean,
than
just
not
stick your
living.
foot out the car door, right? And stop.
Does this thing not have a floor? It's fine. It's fine. There's a 2x4 across the thing. We're good.
Right.
But back to the topic at hand. I mean, the other thing I think a lot of people don't understand is it's like anything in life. Like, have you ever filed a homeowner's insurance claim? Like I have. I think
I
most
haven't
people have
had
this
to,
point.
thankfully, but I know of other people who have.
I mean, it doesn't happen instantaneous though. Like no insurance claim does. Like first off, so you're gonna have a delay between when you're hit and if you get compensated. And then for cyber insurance, a lot of people don't understand is the insurance company's not going to pay a dime until they know what happens. That means
Especially now, yeah.
Yeah. So that travelers thing was a great idea, right? If the travelers forensics team, in theory, had done a little more work on that, they may have cut and covered before travelers paid. And I'm not saying they didn't. Like I don't know the full details of this, but it's a total possibility they could have uncovered before travelers paid out with that investigation. Hey, they didn't have this, and travelers wouldn't have to go through court to get their money back at that point. That's something they're going to learn and walk away from it. That I'd say.
And there are other carriers that are doing that already that are very serious about not paying until they've done an investigation first.
And I just I was involved in one not too long ago for someone who reached out to us, and last I checked, they were 2 months in, like they had made the initial claim 2 months prior, and the forensics were still ongoing. The investigation was still ongoing, and this wasn't like a big business. This was like under a dozen people, kind of thing. So that insurance companies are going through the fine tooth comb because. I mean, from a risk perspective, you're talking about 1,000% increase in risk. You're talking about, no real mitigating factors right now in the current environment that tampers that risk. Now, one thing you can do, the only thing they can do is just, fight having to pay whenever they're supposed to pay and every way, legally available to them to be profitable. That's, they and I'm not faulting them for that. It's a business decision at that point. Yeah, I mean, forensics, I mean, you're talking months, weeks, not to mention the interruption of downtime. Like, for example, we talk a lot of ransomware.
They'll come in and just like take your computers and stuff too sometimes. I mean, depending on the situation, just come in and, just seize the actual assets because they need to freeze time on that situation and look to see what's going on. Now, I mean, that's kind of an extreme example, but it definitely happens.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I mean, ransomware is a great example of this, right? Like they're going to take your stuff to figure out, or at least make you leave your stuff alone until they figured out how it happened. But the whole point of ransomware is you can't do anything. Like it bricks a computer. You need to wipe the computer bare minimum and reset it back up to even get back to work, or better go buy new machines. One of the two.
Unless there could be a BIOS virus though, even too, right?
We can go down that technical rabbit hole, right? Like nothing's guaranteed in that. Oh man, no, that's absolutely
true. Don't you need to burn them all?
I mean, even in something as simple, we're talking a lot about business email compromise lately. That's been a big one everyone's dealing with, which is for those of you who are watching who are not, technical savvy, we're not cybersecurity professionals. Business email compromise is quite simply someone breaks into your email account. They figure out your password, whether through a data breach previously, or they steal it, or they fish it out of someone, trick them to giving it to them, and then they just sit in your email and they read and they read and they read. They read all your correspondence, they read all your contracts, they read anything basically that's in your inbox already, and anything that comes in and going out. And they figure out how to basically take that information and insert themselves in your life in a way they can benefit with money. That can be sometimes, they get your banking information and they impersonate you to your bank. That unfortunately has happened a lot lately. I've seen a lot of cases come up where,
Yeah. I've just had a friend where it happened. I mean, that literally that thing happened where, I mean, and he's just a small business too, like just one guy, and we think, we're not getting targeted if we're small, if you just have one person in business. No, it's only for the big businesses, right? But no, I mean, they got into his main email account, which he has only 2 of, and then started things that he noticed happened. And then come to find out, like a week later, he also let me know that somebody from Verizon called him, trying to get him to verify his account through a text messaging code. So I mean, they were basically trying to get into his Verizon account with information that they gotten from his email account before. So it all came from that business email compromise.
I mean, we're not fear mongering here, but for those businesses that think they don't have anything valuable, do you have a business bank account? Does it have a few $1,000s in it? You've got something that's valuable that these guys can get to if they work hard enough. That's what they think.
Well, and the key there is that they don't know what you have. You could have $1 million. You could have $5. They don't know. They're just trying to get in there and find out.
And it's crazy what we're seeing is the amount of time they're willing to spend. Let's touch on that for a second. You just mentioned this. Like, it's not like, oh, we'll just try for 5 minutes and then give up. Like, it's seriously like a small business of one. I've seen it like half a dozen people. I've seen an organization of half a dozen people. Someone had to have spent at least 3 weeks trying to figure out how to bust in. I've seen that happen where it's like, really, for 6 people, you spent 3 weeks of your time trying to bust in? Well, yeah, because they made a payday of over 5 figures in that particular breach. Like I don't know about you, but like if I'm making $50,000 for 3 weeks worth of work, yeah, okay, yeah. And then all of a sudden, the motivations behind these attackers. So back to our original comment, though, because we got a little tangenty there. BEC, they're in your email. They're trying to steal money. You're thinking to yourself, well, I can at least go back to work. That sucks, right? I can go back to work. Well, it depends. How much money do they take? Can you still make payroll? Can you pay your bills? Well, that's one. Okay, good. You can? Great. You're, good for you. At that point, though, do you trust anything around you? Because you can't kick these people out if you're filing an insurance claim. Yeah. And forensics is going to go through with a fine-tooth comb. I had to advise someone lately who was doing an insurance claim, and literally it was, can we do anything? I'm like, did your insurance give you permission? No. Then no, you can't. So they had to live for weeks knowing that someone could be reading their stuff, and they couldn't do anything about it. Like they could do basically like reset that password, but there's nothing like concrete they could do to go in and make sure at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I remember you telling me about that story. I mean, was it like literally they just couldn't even look at their email, or I mean, how deep did it go as far as?
I mean, they'll let you do some pretty bare bones stuff in that kind of scenario, and not to get too far in the weeds, but they'll let you like reset your password and things like that. But like having an outside party like myself go in, for example, and like dig through and make sure there's no remaining access, because this stuff goes deep, as you and I both know, that's a no-no for the insurance company. They don't want other people poking their fingers around there until they finish their investigation. So I had to tell this client, like, or I guess not this client, I'd tell this organization, hey, not much I can do. Sorry. Like, I don't want to hurt you, but that's the real truth. Like, if I get involved now, I'm going to hurt you, and I don't want that.
Right. We got to let the insurance take its course and do what it's designed to do. As long as they finish their investigation, it can work out that way. But that doesn't mean it's not painful to wait for. I mean, that's the same thing like you were saying. Like even a house claim, I can think back to somebody's house got burned down, and like they were living in a hotel for a month trying to wait for another house to get purchased, and then living in another house for a while their original home was rebuilt, and that was just part of the process of waiting for the insurance to do what they had to do.
Yeah, it's not instantaneous. It's not like I lost, and this unfortunately is happening in a frequent way. I lost 6 figures out of my main account. I lost almost all my money to file an insurance claim. I mean, if they pay, that's a big if, and we can talk about that. You're looking at months minimum in most cases.
I mean, but what do we? I mean, how do you make sure that they're going to pay?
You
and
can't.
know
I
that
mean,
insurance.
that's kind of part of the problem. I mean, take my example. I brought this up in my live stream yesterday. I recently had to do, help with applying for a $2 million policy on a cyber insurance. Right? You get the policy back, and what does it say in the policy? Well, there's something called sublimits now. Like they've always been there, but talk about sublimits. It means, yeah, you might have a $2 million policy, but your sublimit for financial fraud, we're talking about right here. This is financial fraud. Well, that's only 200,000. Like that's the kind of stuff we're seeing on that kind of stuff too. Like that there's no guarantees even in the policy depending on, what kind of crime is committed. Did I lose you, Bill? Hang on. There you are. You're back. You dropped there for a second. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I don't know. It was just being weird.
Well, where did I cut off? Where did I cut off at?
You started talking about the policy. And it just got
Well, I'm
weird.
just saying,
So,
like, policies
it's not
have
your fault.
sublimits. No, you're fine. Policies have sublimits now, is what I just kind of let the audience know. Like, they do have, like, you have a $2 million policy. Your sublimit might be for financial fraud, which is what we were talking about before, $200K. That might be what all they're willing to cover. And you mentioned this before we talked. We're all good people, I like to think. We're all ethical and moral. Well, there are laws involving this kind of stuff for reporting. Most states have them, if not all of them at this point. And when you file an insurance claim, they're going to make sure you do every aspect of that mandatory reporting because they're on the hook now legally for it too. So You're talking about, public disclosures. You're talking about going through with a fine tooth comb and finding every little thing potentially that you or your organization did wrong in this scenario and having to disclose it to some outside party. Like that's not an insignificant amount of emotional distress, if you ask me. Still there? Did I lose you again? Uh-oh. Bill, no! I think we lost Bill, guys. But, yeah, no. And oh, there's Bill. Bill, you're back? I think we lost Bill, but he seems to be moving. Can you hear me, Bill? Hey, you there?
Mike.
Are you
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
There you are.
Yeah, it's the internet being silly. There must be a hacker out there hacking somebody, right? No.
Well, I mean, I think the last thing we rehashed what I just talked about before with the sublimits and kind of all that, how that works. Yeah. But I think the last thing that is true, and this is true with any insurance policy, you make a claim, your costs are going up.
Wow.
That's how it works. I made a claim on my homeowner's insurance for some damage I had recently with a windstorm about a year ago. And it got some damage on my fascia, and it was enough to okay, I'm willing to bite the bullet and pay my $500 deductible to go get my homeowner's insurance to kick in, right? Well, it's great. They only paid for some of it, and now I have to pay more every month because my renewal came up, and guess what? My premiums went up. That's how insurance works. And so if an insurance company knows that you made a claim for, let's be honest here, usually cyber claims tend to be minimum high five figures. I'd say most of the ones I've come across. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Yeah. Just about the ones I'm hearing about pretty commonly are like 80, 90K at least.
And it can go up from that, but that seems about where the baseline is starting. Yeah. So, I mean, if you're making if an insurance company knows you cost the carrier $90,000, they're going to look at you a little cross-eyed for a while and say, hey, we got to minimize our risk. How do we do that?
Yeah.
Well, we only give you options of certain coverage, or we make you pay way more in premiums. Like my cyber insurance, I have no claims, thankfully, and it's still ridiculously high. I paid my.
Well, I mean, you're in a different industry, right?
Everyone says, but
right.
I haven't yet to hear a single person who's gone back, even if their insurance is in perfect standing on cyber insurance, renew and get a better or the same price. No. It always goes up right now. So even
unless they had a terrible price to begin with, right?
Yeah. Well, it used to be. I mentioned this yesterday, and I'm like, this is why, to give our audience an idea of the price of economics and why this never really worked. I think it used to be if you're a business of $1 to $3 million or less, you could go out and buy $1 million policy for $1,200 a year. It was not hard, and that was if you got everything bundled together. I think it was even less than that if you just got cyber sometimes. So they would say, sure, we'll take your premium money and we'll cover you up to $1 million of damage. Well, if everyone's got to make claims, or even, 1 in 10 people or 1 in 100 people even make a claim, that profit margin goes out the wazoo. Like there's
Yeah,
nothing there.
gone.
So they got to raise it up to actually make money.
Yeah, or they got to put the sublimits, which is what they've been doing, because then basically taking the ransomware out of the equation because it's so common and putting that sublimit in
Oh
there.
yeah, that's a big
Yeah,
one lately. Like no more
yeah.
ransomware payments. That one's been over for a while now. Like we're not covering. If ransomware comes after you and you have to pay to get your stuff back, we're not covering it. That's a big one right now.
Well, yeah. I mean, but that really comes down to the whole thing that's better than insurance really is preventing it in the first place as much as you possibly can, because then you don't have to worry about that claim, or you don't have to worry about the
There is something you can do, right? Like my mind goes to a car driving, right? Like there's, I get in the car every day knowing full well that there is a chance, however slight it is, that might
yeah,
be my last day in the car. Like that can happen to me, and God forbid, knock on wood, it doesn't, but it could. However, I don't lose sleep about it because I've mitigated my risk through a variety of factors. The car manufacturer puts all kinds of safety mechanisms in place. I try to drive responsibly.
yeah,
I put my seatbelt on. All these various little things that add up into a much, in my mind at least, much more reduced risk. So,
yeah.
yeah, is it still there? It never completely goes away. No one can say that. I think
No,
everyone knows
no.
that. But and it's true with us as well. Like cyber risk never completely goes away, but you can reduce your risk. And it's all about finding what your risk tolerance is and where you need to be within what you're happy with. Um, right now, the biggest problem is small businesses just never had to think about cybersecurity really,
No, it's kind of a
and
need.
so the risk is just nowhere near in the tolerance level. It's
Yeah, way.
elevated to the point where people are just getting hammered right now.
Yeah, it's kind of a surprise to most of the people that I talk to. They just they haven't really gotten their head around the whole concept that it's a real thing that's elevated as much as it is yet. I mean, I guess the majority of people that seem to rationalize it are the ones who have actually been the victims of an
Oh yeah,
attack.
that goes out the door once they realize. And I think that is part of the problem, right? Like you hear about it from other people, and maybe we're a little desensitized from it because we've been hearing about big companies being hacked for years now. So like sometimes it's like, oh, it goes in that category, but no, this has real life consequences. Like people lose their jobs over this stuff. Like that is
Well,
something that absolutely happens because
and
your
they don't
company gets
talk
hacked.
about it either. So that's part
It's
of the problem.
embarrassing.
Like
It's
the
embarrassing.
awareness is
Like we're
is so
business owners.
low. Yeah.
I mean, it'd be extra embarrassing for us because we're cybersecurity companies, but we're both business owners, and neither one of us, like, I like to think we're both responsible and would do the ethical thing and just go divulge to our clients something happened, but neither one of us would be happy about it. Like, it's
No.
very embarrassing. It's very uncomfortable. It's not something that you want to go out and shout to the rooftops when something
Yeah, like
happens to you. So,
like Biden saying he had cancer or something, right? Like that was the thing on
yeah,
the
that I don't want to really get into that one.
no,
That one's
it
weird.
was so silly though. That's not what he said, but still, it was just like they exploded about that because it was an embarrassing thing. Like if that really was what he said, then
Mhm.
it was like a big deal. But I mean, on such a smaller scale, like saying to a person, especially like if you're housing their private health information or their
Or
their
anything, payment
bank
information,
account
their
numbers or their
addresses,
kids'
anything.
names and
Yeah.
their address and all that. Like, I mean, there's some people I guess that don't think about that. There are like they don't care, but I think the majority of people would rather not have that published out there or available for people that mean them harm to access. And
Yeah,
that's really
absolutely.
the thing. That that's
Absolutely.
that's the thing. We just
Well,
it's an important thing to really keep everyone safe. And me myself, like operating my own business and looking at that, like I wouldn't feel comfortable if I didn't have the right things in place. Like I wouldn't be able to sleep and just know, like when I wake up in the morning, I still have this fear, and I think all of us IT people do.
yeah,
That
and to be clear to the audience, we get we're
that,
biased. Like we
yeah,
absolutely understand we're biased here, but at the
right.
same time, we do think we have a point on this, which is, this isn't just an obscure problem that only affects the IT departments of big companies. Like this is a small business problem because at least
Yeah,
the ones that we deal with, and there's other reasons people do hacking on the attacking side, but there is a direct, very easy to pull off financial gain here. for people a
Yeah.
lot of times running these organizations. And so they look at this like a business model and say, okay, I can compromise this many companies this month and generate this kind of net profit, and then my P&L will be this. Like, that's what we're seeing here. It's just a matured
Yeah, it's
business.
just
So
create opportunities for all the targets that are out there in their system, so
yeah,
they
yeah,
can
I mean, they're even talking
and
like it. Like,
use the CRM to keep track of all the contacts and phone numbers. Yeah, that's what they do.
that's really what they do. Well, I'm
Yeah,
at time here for this, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Again, my name is Logan Edmonds. I'm with Tabernacle Technology Solutions. We are located in Columbus, Ohio.
yep. And I'm Bill Heather with Evolve Cyber Solutions, and I'm in Southern Maryland. You can always just go to my website at evolvedcs.net if you'd like some more information from me in Southern
Yeah.
Maryland. Otherwise, I know Logan has a pretty good website too.
Both of our links are in the description. Check it out, and wherever maybe you want to go look at. I know both of us offer free consultations for how to even get started on evaluating your cyber risk.
100%.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, Logan.